I want to say thank you so much, Robert, for joining us. His resume kind of speaks for itself, but founder of LA Kitchen, founder of DC Central Kitchen, and just doing amazing stuff in the nonprofit sector down in LA and beyond. So we're thrilled to have you, Robert, and yeah, take it away. We want to learn from you.
Okay, hey man, just so I know, I see a bunch of you all. Do you all see me? Everybody, I see Melissa there. Okay, cool. I just know how it was working. So I didn't know whether it was just you and me hanging or whether it was everybody. So cool. Well, again, good morning, everybody. It's an honor to be here. And just so you know, a lot of the reason I jump at the opportunity to share ideas is, as many of you all can see, dude, I'm the old gray-haired dude, you know, and I guarantee you it's only a matter of time before some young whippersnapper calls you all up and says, hey man, can you spend a little bit of your time telling me about your journey? I mean, there's a sense of obligation that I feel to share, but at the same time, and you know, throughout my career, many people have really helped me out. Many people have helped me out. And in particular, when you're an entrepreneur, man, I mean, you know, I'm sure all of us have those moments in which we're panicked. You know, this is all going to fall apart, man. This is, you know, the dream that I can see so clearly isn't necessarily seen by so many other people who, frankly, at times, I think anybody with a vision always feels like, how can anybody not see it? It's so clear, it's so obvious. But I'm in the middle of that right now. In fact, sometimes you think, I think many people understandably feel like, and again, I'll just use, if you don't mind, I'll use me for an example. You know, there's a sense probably of like, hey man, Robert's been doing this for almost 30 years. Never missed a payroll once in my 30 years of doing business. But you know, there's a sense it must be easy street now. And it isn't. I mean, I'm pushing the envelope hard once again, and I'm getting pushback. You always do, man. You know, we think sometimes that, you know, the whole idea of food entrepreneurs, particularly how much it's in the paper now, that it's a fun, easy road. But I think all of us, anybody in this space knows that it is incredibly difficult to get into the food space and to break even in this food space, let alone, you know, make profit. And it's particularly almost doubly interesting when you're trying to lug along a big old sack of good deeds along with it, you know? So for those of you who do not know, my business model is very, very straightforward. Just so you know, I've always been in the kind of let's make the world a better place business. I ran nightclubs since I was 18, throughout my 20s, through a very good time. You can probably see I got a little Bad Brains poster on the wall there and a bunch of the things that I've worked with in my past. And I'm really excited, by the way, any of you all who are in LA, one of my favorite bands, the OCs, are doing a show this Friday night to benefit LA Kitchen. That really makes me happy, man, that we still got badass bands willing to do, you know, really turn it up to 11 for the LA Kitchen. But, you know, after a night of volunteering, in which I was made aware that the group I was volunteering with was purchasing food from a very expensive grocery store to serve to people standing outside in the rain, you know, I just looked around and said, dude, I've worked in an industry that throws away a ton of food every night. We should do something. I mean, you know, again, I know what you all are doing is historic and beautiful and time honored, but it's expensive, and it's kind of an endless cycle of well-intended people buying food from a grocery store to go out to serve people on the street. So I just proposed a very simple idea that was based on FedEx, a new business model at the time, that said, hey man, if you could get the restaurants, the hotels, the universities, the hospitals, farmers, people who hate throwing away food, they're food service pros. They don't like throwing away food, but they just don't want to get sued. And they just don't want to, they want to do something that is convenient for them. If you can set up a professional system, man, you can feed more people better food for less money, but start a job training program, offer men and women a chance to come in off the street and be part of the solution. And you can shorten the line by the way you serve it, and then repay the restaurants with entry-level people. It was a really, I felt, again, as a young volunteer, that this was a classic example of quid pro quo business. Everybody would get something. There, you know, everybody had a reason to participate. It benefited everybody financially, socially. There was paydays for everybody. But, as I started this conversation, it still rings true. When you come in and you try and disrupt a system, even with the best of intentions, even with a better model, it doesn't mean the people who are currently in the system, relying on the system, built the system, profit from the system, have any interest in seeing it kind of reorganized. And you'd think I would have learned that in my mid-20s when I started this journey. And here I am 58, and I'm still doing battle with nutritional Neanderthals. You know, people who have a sense of this is the way we've always done it. We always put things in a 4-compartment tray. You know, food never touches. You know, protein is always meat. You know, there's been a long history in my career of trying to just find a cheaper, faster, better way to feed more people better food. Which again, I think for many of us would seem like kind of a file it under D for duck kind of thing. How can anybody not want to do that? But the DC Central Kitchen was formed because again, you know, no one would do this. And I'm trying to streamline our conversation here a little bit. You know, I did that for almost 25 years, but I think the more interesting part for our conversation today was our social business, which started in 1996. We launched our first social business, which was Fresh Start Catering. And it was driven by two things. A, I didn't want to be constantly chasing money for grants, but more importantly, we had been doing job training since day one. And as the face of the trainees shifted from addicts and homeless to returning felons, it became really clear that a lot of the restaurants, as generous as they were really struggling. And more of the corporate places, the Marriotts, the Sodexos, the Airmarks, people who had been good employment partners for us were saying in effect, dude, time out. We can't do felons. And I was looking at groups of men and women who were graduating who had done everything right, man. You know, they were truly ready to leave their past behind, yet they couldn't get the door open. So we started our own businesses to show that, and this is, if I may be so bold, this is kind of an example of the way I like to try and do business. There's a historic, we hit a wall, and there was a sense of, well, historically, job training programs train men and women for jobs, and then the larger economy absorbs them. There's a place where they go out and find a job somewhere. What happens when you reach a point where that doesn't work? You know, many of us rage against the machine. Many of us, you know, that sucks, that's stupid, that's ridiculous, versus saying, okay, cool, I don't agree with this, but if that's the situation, then I must change and try something new. So that's when we became an employer. I didn't set out to become an employer kind of a social enterprise. In fact, there wasn't even a word for it back then. We called ourselves righteous entrepreneurs when we started doing this kind of work. But the idea was somebody's got to go out and create these jobs, man. You know, if not us, who? And that's been a big driver for me for a long time. You know, this sense of if not us, who? If not people in the food service business, if not people in the nonprofit world, if not social entrepreneurs, who? We are the ones, you know, who I think are, I don't want to say destined, but I think let's just say obligated, intellectually obligated to go that extra step, to push that, you know, a little bit harder, to take sometimes the slings and arrows that come with change. So DC was humming right along, but I came out here because I tend to be, and this may be germane to some of you all, but I like to refer to myself as an amateur futurist, in that I'm always trying to anticipate where's the supply and what's the demand. Where's the food going to come from that I rely upon to serve the men and women that I work with? And who's going to be in need, both of training and also of food. And this drew me into something that very few people are aware of or even want to talk about, which is aging in America. Now, before we go down this road, I got to tell you, man, it's not like, you know, I heart seniors. You know, it's just, this is business 101. Whether I like it or not, there is an army. I mean, and we're talking a huge number of older people in America who are going to live longer than they have money in the bank. But every city in America has got a contract to do senior meals. The majority of these contracts, like school food, like prison food, like all these things, are big multinational catering companies. So I started really thinking about this and realizing, okay, the supply of food that charities, food banks, pantries rely upon, and again, every single morsel is lost profit. Industry bought it, they couldn't sell it, so they donated it to a charity. That's going away fast. I mean, you know, restaurant people are generous to a fault, but they're not going to just continually waste money. They're going to get, their systems are going to get tighter and tighter and tighter. So here we have an estimated 45 million people who are at risk of hunger in America. And the two ways we really provide meals to them are the charitable system, which again relies on lost profit, or food stamps, which for those of you who are you know, maybe paying attention to what's going on in DC, this is really, man, in the crosshairs right now, along with universal school breakfast, nutritional lunches, all that kind of stuff. I became fascinated with fruits and vegetables. You know, long-term sustainable food that I can rely upon is cosmetically imperfect fruits and vegetables. And even though the young social entrepreneur set are mad for the imperfect produce, you know, space, nonetheless, we're talking about hundreds of billions of pounds of food. So I'm not really worried for the next 5 to 10 years that this food's going to disappear, but there is a lifespan to it. But I came out here to LA to tap into that, but also anticipating as a good social entrepreneur, saying in effect, okay, there's a bunch of seniors coming. There's a contract to serve those seniors, but the current contract, like all federal reimbursement contracts, call for 3 ounces of protein to be served. Now, if you get into that, you know, that usually means 3 ounces of meat. But as a country, we can't afford that. It's not sustainable. It's not healthy. So, and you've got a new generation of seniors who will be probably the most nutritionally sophisticated generation of older people. So you can use a little bit of probability to say somewhere over the next 5 to 10 years, you'll see the first beginning of a generation of older people who will be much more open to vegan, vegetarian. If that's going to happen, why don't we start to light the fuse now? Because again, you know, we can't afford this. We have to aggressively move forward with the redeveloping and reimagining what does a senior meal look like. So that's one of the reasons I came out here to LA. I have supply. LA is the largest concentration of older people in America, so you have demand. But because it's one of those cities like a Seattle, a San Francisco, and New York, where you can anticipate early adapters of older people who are going to want healthy meals. This is a good place for it. You also have very strong media here, which can help you project out this idea to a new generation of older people that this is what meals can look like. This is what an active lifestyle can be for you. I am way up in this whole issue of aging in America. And in fact, I urge any of you all who are open, like I said, it's not the most glamorous thing, but I find it wildly challenging. I mean, there's no one in this space. There's virtually no one in this space. So from an entrepreneurial perspective, it's kind of fun, man. I feel like the first person on the playground, you know. Now, again, it's, and it's funny, like I said, man, most people aren't really excited about this issue of aging, but for all you young people out there listening, man, this is not an academic discussion, man. This is business 101. My generation, if we don't stay healthy, active, stay out of the hospital, live independently, your generation is really economically hosed. This is not good deed stuff. This is America 101. We have got to keep an older generation active and productive. But what's exciting is, you know, as I suggested, every city in America has got a senior meal contract. So when you do social enterprise, many people think, here's my product, I'm going to build it, somebody will buy it. And I've always been a little bit dubious about that. You know, my thing is, I've always wanted to know, where is my customer? Who's guaranteed to buy my product? And so, you know, for me, partnering with the city or the county or the Department of Aging to provide senior meals, to work with a hospital, somebody who's guaranteed to buy the product. If we can agree upon the menu, they're set to buy it. I just have to float the debt while we, you know, buy the product, produce the product, deliver the product, and wait for them to pay. But the point is, it's guaranteed, and I really like that. And I think that this is what I've tried to do here, is set up a system. I've always been open source, so anything I have, you're welcome to. I'll share anything we have. But the idea is saying, look, this is a powerful opportunity here, because, you know, this is a potential for a social enterprise in city after city, big and small, to get its roots dug in. This is a chance for a new generation of mayors. You know, just so you know, here, I'm going to spin this around here. There's this big blueprint on the wall here. I don't know if you can see it. It's a little glare, but that blueprint on the wall there is the building I'm in, which is called LA Prep, and we co-developed it. And it's 55 kitchens. It's the biggest incubator space in America. It's a 60,000 square foot facility, 55 kitchens. We're the anchor tenant. And because of our role in the development, we have a 20-year lease at 85 cents a square foot. So we got a really solid deal on the space, that's something I can really grow in. We can do 10, 15,000 meals a day here. But one of the reasons I was so excited about this, beyond the fact of the size of our kitchen, the lease, the proximity to 50 other businesses who might buy product from us, people that could help us train, that could potentially employ our graduates, we could buy food from them. All that aside, what I was really excited about as a social entrepreneur was that I knew that every city in America wants a food hub. You know, every single mayor, some city council member, somebody is agitating for a food hub. Now, many people don't even know what they think they want, but the point is they know they want it. So they're coming here to visit. And that's why one of the reasons I was excited is they're going to come here and they're going to see the LA Kitchen. And they're going to have a chance for me to talk a little bit about the issue of aging and the powerful opportunity to create a model that buys local food, produces really beautiful, healthy, scratch-cooked meals that are ethnically diverse, and that reinvests profit over and over and over again. Now, many of them are going to say, damn, that is cool, man. We didn't even think about this aging issue. Could we open one of those kitchens in our town? And it's like, cool, man. Yeah, I'm open source. I am more than happy. I'm not interested in opening McLA kitchens, but I'll be happy to help you open one. But when they're in their enthusiasm, what I want to do, and I think this is really key, if I can just do this really quick with you all, man, there's a big difference between a salesperson and a social entrepreneur. Now, if all I was doing when those people came in here was say, LA Kitchen, LA Kitchen, LA Kitchen, it's cool, man. I got a superior product. I'm happy to sell it. I can talk about it all day long. But if that's what I did, I would be a salesperson for the LA Kitchen. Again, cool. But I'm a social entrepreneur. I use the LA Kitchen to entice people to see the power of social enterprise. Because while every mayor has the potential to look and say, dang, I've been hearing these young food advocates or old food advocates, anyway, food advocates talking about a local food economy. And I really always thought that was kind of silly, but I'm starting to see it, man. School food, senior meals put together, that's a lot of money. That's a powerful opportunity. And now I see through LA Kitchen a really powerful way in which we can support the local food economy by taking those contracts to buy local. And that can include purchases from school-based gardens to teach kids entrepreneurship early. I see how they can do job training and employ people and pay good wages and keep people out of prison. I see how they engage volunteers. I see their dedication to healthy meals. I see the healthcare ramifications of feeding a generation of older people more plant-based meals. I see the inclusionary way they engage seniors in their menu development. I see, and I love the fact that profits aren't diverted. And they're going to think that's LA Kitchen. But what I'm going to say is no, what you love, you think you love LA Kitchen, but what you love is social enterprise. So when you go back to your city, don't just look at the senior meal contract, look at every single contract you have and realize that if you turn the power of your local government onto social enterprise, if you say to a generation of kids coming out of college, a generation raised doing service, man, if you've got an idea that can keep money local in this town, this government will help you make it happen. I always felt that the missing ingredient for social enterprise wasn't ingenuity, wasn't drive, wasn't determination. It was really capital, and to my way of thinking, local government. And this is why, again, I tapped into this senior meal contract, because while it's good business for LA Kitchen, and it's good business for others that might follow in our particular avenue, it opens this doorway to the role that government can play through the way it allocates its contracts. Now, a good example of the way we've tried to continue to push beyond the caliber of our product is the city has been looking at two things that are really powerful. One is we have an LA Food Policy Council that has a Good Food Purchasing Act, which means any city agency that spends more than $10,000 a year on food needs to make an effort to buy local. Bada bing, here we are. We help do that. So, the idea of talking to your city council, if you don't have a food policy council, you might want to talk about developing one. But if you do, you might want to talk about that specific legislation, because again, that starts to point buying dollars towards local, which is where we live. The second is, the idea of creating actual incentives or extra points in contract negotiations for social enterprise businesses. And the county of Los Angeles has just done that. And we're one of the first registered social enterprises in Los Angeles County. And again, that gives us extra points whenever we apply. And again, don't forget, man, we're competing with multinational companies that are using processed meals, reduced wages, and exported profit. So they have tremendous advantages over us when it comes to the price per meal. So those extra points are going to be really, really important, particularly for those of us who are really committed to a living wage. We started everybody here at 13 with full benefits, anticipating the march towards 15, which we're on here in California. But the other thing that I would urge you to ponder is many contracts for anything, it's not just city government, whatever, it's virtually anything, is driven by the lowest bid. And low bid is where processed meals and low wages and frankly the need for charity comes from. And so one of the things I'm interested in exploring is can you start to play around with language that would really tilt towards best value? Again, it's getting progressive city council members, progressive mayors to understand that the era in which that their tax dollars could leave town. It only means they have to raise money through charity, raise money through taxes. And so that idea, again, of helping government see that through the language of its policies and its contracts, it can incentivize it and really see an explosion of social enterprises, which I believe our mayor's dreams comes true. So I've talked for about 25 minutes. I'm not sure whether you want to do any questions or anything.
Well, first
Or you
off,
can do whatever you want.
yeah, thank you so much. And I'm taking notes as we go. And so if anything resonates with you guys, feel free to throw those into the chat. Well, I guess one quick question I had, and then I would love to open it up for, you have maybe 10 more minutes, Robert?
Yeah, dude, I have all day. I'll talk to you all day long.
Okay, guys, we just extended for 8 hours. So are you guys all in? The first question so you've done a lot, right? You started off with DC Central Kitchen. You've now launched LA Kitchen. You've been one of the 50 most powerful nonprofit leaders. You've won, Oprah Angel Award, Humanitarian of the Year, James. What would you say to, and you've touched on it a little bit, but to the aspiring, brand new kind of innovator entrepreneur that's thinking about getting into food waste and recovery and wants to do good, doesn't have that clear pathway forward. One, what would you say to them? And then two, what was just amazing advice? What was some of the best advice that you got maybe early on?
If you chase money, you run forever. If you chase results, money comes to you. And I gave that advice to myself, to be honest with you. But that's something I've always believed, man. I've worked hard to really try and get results beyond. And in fact, let's take this really quick, because when I came into this business, the sector still, to a certain extent, measures its impact on meals served, pounds moved. And this is pretty cold-blooded, man. But, the charitable world has some culpability for the spike in diabetes and obesity amongst the poor, because we've been feeding them junk food for 30 years in the name of feeding the poor. And so I've always been really focused on nutrition. The idea of I didn't want to just feed the poor. I wanted to really develop a model that meets current demand but diminishes future needs simultaneously. That's a fun way to think. In other words, how can I do things today that really truly help somebody out, but do it in a way that somehow lessens their load tomorrow? There's a sense of we've got to move past this idea of just feeding the poor all day long. Because again, at the end of the day, and this is what most people do not get, donated food is lost profit. And when I first got in this business, man, and again, going back to probability, it was before cable news or cable television or the internet. And with cable came the food channel. With the food channel came suddenly an explosion of people who wanted to be chefs. When I first got in the biz, there were only 2 culinary schools in America. It was the CIA and Johnson & Wales. And that was it. And if you wanted to learn management, you went to Cornell or Purdue. Now every high school in America has got a culinary program. And what that means is you've got a predictable army of chefs that are going to come out with the latest inventory controls, which are going to slowly erode the food. Whether I like the charitable system or not, it's eroding the supply of food. So for many of these groups, fresh fruits and vegetables are all that's left. That's really predictable, right? So the one concern I have, and I know it sounds kind of creepy in a way, because at one point, in fact, in many points in my career, I've really pushed hard against the charitable sector. I'm not a big fan, but it's needed, it's required. It's whether I like it or not, it's a part of who we are now, and we need it. And they're going to rely on this food. So suddenly what you've got is an army of young entrepreneurs that are coming in and tapping into the one last flow, steady supply of food that these agencies are going to need to feed poor people. And so there is a sense of unintended consequences that I just urge people to think about. So again, the areas that I'm really interested in is what's going to be the new metric that we use to move past the amount of the pounds we moved. I'm really interested, for example, we're doing an incredible partnership with USC's medical school. And I want to start to figure out how all of our meals, the charitable meals we do, which again are all donated product made by volunteers and students, can they meet 1/3 of the RDA, the recommended daily allowance? In other words, can we take that big giant leap where every single meal we produce is a nutritionally sound meal? You know, I'm very interested in the nexus of food and medicine, particularly when you think about aging and Alzheimer's or dementia. There's so many opportunities here for, you know, but one thing I'll point out, you know, I mentioned this kitchen we're in, and we're surrounded by all these kitchens. Many of these incubator spaces and many young entrepreneurs, because of wage and rent, their product is, you know, what you've got is an army of social entrepreneurs that are producing beautiful, healthy products for people who can afford a $10 ginger limeade. And the reality is, I think for many of us, the challenge is how can we, how can the true social entrepreneurs really see, you know, the future isn't selling more groovy products at Whole Foods, you know, for a very small number of people. How can you get products? How can we develop products that are affordable to regular working people? How can we produce beautiful, healthy meals that are actually affordable? I think this is probably one of the greatest challenges. And I would also urge you to ponder, you know, moving, for example, if I was the mayor of Fresno, California right now, I'd take an ad in the LA paper, the San Francisco paper, the Oakland paper, the Seattle paper saying, hey man, look, you know, anybody can open a social enterprise in San Francisco. You know, are you bold enough for Fresno? Because the reality is the real need for social enterprise isn't in the big cities, man. It's out in 30 miles out. You know, it's where Walmart dominates. You know, if you can compete out there, and this is why I'm so interested in mayors and trying to elect a generation of mayors who really understand the power of social enterprise and come in on day one saying, man, if you got a social enterprise, you have a friend in City Hall. Let's get it on.
That's fantastic. And Robert, I love that connection to not only outside just the major urban centers, but the connection to cities. That's been one of our focuses at OpenIDEO. We've partnered with City of San Francisco and Department of Environment on how can we start to scale up some of these efforts that we're seeing, and partnering with government and mayors in particular is a huge opportunity.
Yeah, man, rural poverty and aging is the wickedest crossroads ahead. So I'm very interested. This is why, for example, I also started a thing called campus kitchens, or DC Central Kitchen, but there's 57 of those. But the idea is, could a community college or a high school in a rural town be a processing hub? You know, could an after-school cooking program, an intergenerational after-school mentoring program, intergenerational gardens? Is there something that we could produce in a rural community using that high school or college cafeteria in the off hours?
That's huge. I'm curious, maybe we have time for 2 questions. Does anyone have you could either, if you'd like to unmute yourself and share verbally, or you could type in. Anyone have a question for Robert? First.
Yeah, and just so you know, if anybody, I'll talk to anybody anytime. I'm just regger@lakitchen.org. Man, dude, reach out. I'm always up for getting down, so never hesitate.
It's very kind of you. Anyone have any? First question gets a creative confidence book. And Pesha's going to be in LA for the next few weeks, it looks like, and would love to volunteer.
Oh, dude, yeah, man. In fact, you know, we're just about to launch. We've been doing it for a while, but a good example of the power of food, man. We're doing a super diversity calendar. So every month, we'll have a variety of different days in which we will. In fact, this is a good example of a social entrepreneur's way of thinking. I looked at our volunteer calendar. And we love volunteers, man. Again, it's really bringing volunteers in, whether it's young people who have to do service hours, older people who must stay active. We're really trying to get them in. But what we've done is look around and I realized, wow, virtually every volunteer calendar focuses on Judeo-Christian Western holidays. And here we are in LA, where you've got massive Sikh, Muslim, Hindu communities. You've got people from all around the world. So what we've done is we've kind of data mined, and we've looked for every faith tradition holidays, every Independence Day, every revolutionary hero's birthday as an opportunity to say, hey man, for example, Lunar New Year is on the 21st, we're doing that, or MLK, and then African American History Month. How can we bring in chefs from the community? How can we do an entire day of volunteerism and students working together while they're learning about a culture, they're cooking a specific meal, and then the meals that go out to the larger community are featuring that culture's meals. You know what I mean? So it's another way to really just, again, pull everything we can out of food. But Pasha, man, come on down. We'd love to have you there.
That's fantastic. and she actually helped launch the Salvage Supper Club here up in San Francisco, which is anyway, chef using some of the same tactics that
Right.
you're using, which is really exciting.
Yeah, no, in fact, we launched on George Bush Sr.'s inauguration day in 1989. And the DC Central Kitchen, I think, has been doing 5,000 meals a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for 25 years with food that would have been thrown away. So, there's a deep, long history of people. And frankly, the reality, man, this is just, we're doing what people did back in the agri culture. We're just there's just a culture of no waste that we really deeply embrace.
That's fantastic. So we have 2 questions that people have written in. And so recognizing first that it's 10 o'clock, so if anyone needs to hop off, that's okay. We would love for you to stay for a few more minutes.
If you have to split, thank you.
And then, so the first question is, the LA Kitchen values are impressive. Did they evolve over time, or did you start there?
We started there. When I started the organization, the goal was, young brothers and sisters, oftentimes we become the beast we set out to slay. How do you avoid from the get-go becoming the big fat giant corporation that you were going to be the opposite of? No one wakes up when they're 20. I like to say this, man. No one wakes up when they're 20, looks in the mirror and says, man, when I grow up, I'm going to be a boring bureaucrat that stifles innovation. But the world's full of them. So the question becomes, how did people who had to be young, fiery people go down that wrong road? So the question becomes, let's set our values up right now. Let's determine exactly what we want to be. So this is why I'm open source. People are like, oh, you can open in other cities. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. Why? I mean, that's just not my bag. I'm happy to help other people, but I don't want to become that person who gets kind of pulled into the idea of it's got to be my program. My thing is, it's like, if somebody wants to take some of our ideas and use them, rock on, I'll share. But again, it was that idea. We did definitely start with those values. We worked as a team. And just so you know, I think this is another thing that's fascinating, is I've been deeply, deeply exploring what does leadership mean for me personally. For many, many years, I have not been or was not the highest paid employee at the organizations I founded. There's no rule that says because I'm the CEO, I have to be the highest paid person. The reality is my circumstances didn't mandate it, and my leadership isn't derived from my paycheck. So why, I've always tried to unpack these kind of ideas. But very much the idea of, we sat around for a while and thought about that value statement. I'm quite proud of those. I'm glad somebody, who was it who brought that up, man? Thank you for bringing it up. I'm really, that's something I'm quite proud of.
Yeah, Melissa, who was one of our top ideas in OpenIDEO, she's doing education toolkits for kids for food waste.
Right on.
One final question, and then we'll let you go, is 810 was asking, who are the organizations that are out on the edges and in the suburbs?
Well, again, campus kitchens, the Food Recovery Network, any of the school-based programs. And this is one of the things that I think my generation in particular hasn't really grasped, is there's 100 million people under 30, oftentimes lumped together in the kind of, the millennial bag. But what does it mean when you raise an entire generation doing service? Every single kid, virtually every single kid in every single university has done service. Now, a lot of them had to do it, but nonetheless, you got to figure that it's a big bunch of them. And I guarantee you, whether it's, I see my friend Dana in there from Food Shift. I've met so many young people who were getting service hours when they came to volunteer at DC Central Kitchen or LA Kitchen. And I'm mesmerized by that. This idea, we've got an entire generation of young people who, many of them, this idea of, I don't want to choose between making money and doing good. I don't want to choose between integrity and a paycheck. I think that's one of the coolest things ever, So that idea of realizing that universities and schools and the cafeterias, as threadbare as some of them might be, nonetheless, that's an existing resource. Another group that I think has such massive potential, man, is the Cooperative Extension Program of USDA. It's one of the most underutilized existing resources. So you think about land-grant universities full of a generation raised doing, who love food, raised doing service. And out of those land-grant universities go this matrix of the cooperative extension system. So you might have in Lexington, Kentucky, for example, UK, 5 miles out, 10 miles out, 30 miles out, there might be a high school, a middle school, a community college. Imagine starting to link those together. In fact, when I was at Lexington to talk with the campus kitchen there, Aramark, the big company, just gotten the food service contract, but they were obligated to buy 25% of their food locally, which meant that a community kitchen somewhere out there that could actually source Kentucky product and process it had a guaranteed, purchaser at the university. So these are the kind of things that fascinate me. What's already there, and how can you potentially repurpose it to get a better yield per hectare, as they used to say in the ag schools.
That's fantastic. So we have another question that Philip might need to send to you separately after this, because I think we gotta wrap up here. But
yeah, Philip, this is a great question. It's one of my favorites, and again, I'm very interested in all this stuff. But another thing I'm really interested, man, is broths. We are jacking out to me, broths are like healthy Jägermeisters. The idea of addicts or older people getting these beautiful, and we're taking the odds and ends of stuff that we have at the end of the day. So to be able to turn this idea of no waste into something, not only can you max out the value, train people, engage volunteers, produce healthy meals, but if you can take all the scraps and make a super healthy broth, dudes, this is the future.
That's fantastic. I'm writing that down. Broths are the future.
Pureeing is the future. Pureeing and broths, man. Those are the two things.
Well, that's good that Philip is at regrained, so that's fantastic. I'm wondering if we can do something really wild before Robert jumps off and we end. If anyone is calling in and can turn your video back on, I want to get a selfie of all of us kind of waving or giving a thumbs up, so we can have kind of a
cool
Chioma there who's in the room next to me. So if anyone is calling in and can turn your video back on, I want to just take a quick selfie. And Robert, do you have any sign that you like? I mean, is it a heart for the heart tattoo that you have? What's your favorite kind of?
Well, dude, rock on, dude.
Okay, so if everyone can do on the count of 3 and hold the rock on for Robert, I'm gonna. All right, everyone, throw it up, and I'm gonna take a screenshot here on 3. 1, 2, 3, rock on. All righty, and I like it. Angel had the
yeah.
Well,
all right, everybody. Hey, it's been a pleasure.
So much to Robert, and we super appreciate it. I threw your email in there. As
anybody, bring it on. I'm always happy to chat.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
All right, everybody. See you around.